Hello, my name is Andrea Halverson, and I'm here today to walk you through teacher relicensure in Minnesota and specifically at DaVinci Academy. I want to make note that everything in this presentation is as accurate as possible as of July 2021. However, I always encourage you to consult the PELSB website for the most accurate and up-to-date information, as sometimes changes do occur. To start off with, I'd like to clarify some roles and responsibilities both on behalf of the teacher as well as on behalf of the school. As a teacher or another licensed staff member, your first responsibility is to complete any necessary trainings or continuing education units or CEUs. So basically your job is to do training. You're also responsible for tracking your hours to ensure you have enough hours so that you can complete your renewal on your renewal date. You are also expected to turn in your hours regularly. This one is actually not a requirement, but highly suggested so that you can stay on top of your hours and mandatory requirements. And you are expected to complete the renewal process on time based on your renewal date. If you do not complete your renewal at the appropriate time, you won't have a license. So it's important that you complete that process when it's time. In terms of DaVinci's responsibilities, our responsibilities are to offer professional development sessions on a variety of topics. We submit any CEUs that you submit to us to PELSB, and PELSB is the licensing board for the state of Minnesota. All of the hours that you complete have to be submitted online or they will not work for your renewal. So we take care of uploading those to PELSB. And last but not least, we are responsible for verifying that staff are appropriately licensed for their position. Now notice we are not responsible for completing your hours. We're not responsible for making sure you have all of the hours. We are just making sure that you have actually completed the requirements and sent them in so that we make sure we have licensed staff in the correct positions. All right, now I'd like to talk a little bit about the 4 different types of licenses in Minnesota because it makes a big difference when it comes to your renewal. About 3 years ago, Minnesota changed its licensing system to a 4-tier system, and most teachers who are experienced teachers are going to fall in the category of Tier 4. Tier 4 means that you are fully licensed in the state of Minnesota. It means that you have a 5-year license. It means you have at least 3 years of experience teaching in Minnesota. And this license requires 125 hours or 125 CEUs plus mandatory requirements, which I'll talk through in a minute. A Tier 3 license is also a fully licensed teacher in the state of Minnesota. However, this license is a little bit different. This license is designed for brand new teachers or teachers who are new to teaching in Minnesota. When you get a Tier 3 license, it is a 3-year license. And you do need 75 hours or 75 CEUs plus all of the mandatory requirements. Once you have completed your initial 3 years of teaching in Minnesota on a Tier 3 license, when you renew that license, it automatically becomes a Tier 4 license. So you don't have to do any extra paperwork, but you do have to have your 75 hours and all of your mandatory requirements. One thing to note for those of you who are on a Tier 3 license, you are expected to complete all of the mandatory requirements, and it's a pretty long list. We'll get to that in just a minute, but you only get 3 years to get all those in. So make sure that you're keeping track of what you've done, what you haven't done, because you only have 3 years instead of the 5-year like the Tier 4 folks. All right. Tier 1 and Tier 2 are both special permission licenses. If you've been teaching for a while in Minnesota, you've probably heard the term variance or a personnel variance. These used to be variances where you had to have special permission because you don't hold a regular license in the state of Minnesota. Variances don't exist anymore. Now we have Tier 1 and Tier 2, and there's a couple of differences between them. A Tier 2 license is a 2-year license. And a Tier 2 actually does not require any hours for renewal, but does have other requirements for renewal. Tier 2 is typically for folks who are either enrolled in a teacher ed program, or they might have a master's degree in the content area but don't have a teaching license. And there's a few other areas too, a few other ways they can get a Tier 2 license. But those of you that are Tier 2, you actually do not need to upload hours into the system because they won't be used for renewal for you. And then a tier 1 is similar, also a special permission, but tier 1 is only a 1-year license. We have to reapply for a tier 1 every single year. They also do not need to keep track of hours, but do have other requirements for renewal. Our tier folks are typically people who have a bachelor's degree, but not in the field of education. So they have some other hoops they have to jump through, but they do not need to track hours in the online system like tier 3 and tier 4. Most of what I'm going to talk about in the remainder of the presentation today applies to tier 3 and tier 4. If you are a tier 1 or a tier 2 license holder, I will be in contact with you individually to talk through your requirements and what you need to complete to renew your process. All right, our next area I'd like to talk about are the mandatory requirements. These are requirements for everyone with a tier 3 or a tier 4 license. You have to have hours in all of these areas to be able to renew your license. Again, tier 4, you have 5 years. Tier 3, you have 3 years. So you want to make sure you get all of these. I also would like to note that these requirements do change periodically, and you will be expected to complete whatever requirements are on the list when you renew. So if the list consists of certain items when you get your license, but by the end of your 5 years or your 3 years, the list has changed, you are expected to follow whatever is in place at the time of renewal. We typically find out a while ahead of time when these requirements do change, but it's always a good idea to just double check, especially if you're in that last year before renewal, to make sure that they haven't changed, to make sure you have all the hours and areas that you need. Okay, so you can see the list here of things that are required. So positive behavior interventions, accommodation, modification, and adaptation of curriculum, mental illness or mental health, suicide prevention, which is new, and I want to just mention for those of you who are sort of mid-renewal cycle right now, mental health and suicide prevention used to be lumped into one category under mental health. However, in the last couple of years, suicide prevention has been pulled out as a separate area, so you do need to have hours in both areas. Also on the list is reading preparation, and 2 other new categories that are on the list are English language learners, or ELL, and cultural competency. You used to have to address how you would support English language learners in a reflection piece. However, the reflection has gone away, and you do need actual continuing ed hours in English language learners to be able to renew your license. Do note that technology is not a required area anymore. And note that you can only check the box for a mandatory requirement if it's designated on the certificate that you receive for your training. This is not something where you can pick and choose what area it fits, because there are specific criteria from the state that says what meets the criteria and what doesn't. So if you get a certificate from a training, if it specifically says it meets one of these required areas, then you can use it for that area. If it does not say or is blank, you cannot use it for one of these areas. You can just use it for general hours to count towards your 75 or 125. Another thing I want to clarify on here is that DaVinci will offer classes for these areas periodically, but we do not offer them every year. As I mentioned at the beginning of the presentation, as a licensed staff member, it is your responsibility to make sure you get these requirements completed. So if DaVinci is not offering a class when you need it and you're up for renewal, you will need to find a resource for that class somewhere else. If you're looking for something and you can't find it, please contact me and I will give you some resources and ideas. There's lots of places around where you can complete hours on your own. So just wanted to make sure you know that if DaVinci isn't offering a class you need when you need it, there are other options, and you will be expected to go and find another option if DaVinci is not offering what you need when you need it. All right, so as a teacher or another licensed staff member, while your license is current, a few things that you're going to want to do. The first thing is you want to keep track of any CEU forms you get, and this is whether it's a training you attend at DaVinci, a webinar you attend, a training you attend off-site, wherever. Typically you're going to get a certificate of completion and it will tell you how many hours you've completed and all of those things. Find a safe space at either school or your home to keep track of these. My personal recommendation is that I have a file cabinet at home that has a folder in it that says clock hours, and I put every single certificate I ever get in that same folder, so I'm not having to try to track them down 5 years later. So keeping track of those in a safe space, in a consistent space, will help you when you get to your renewal time period. A highly suggested idea is to upload your hours regularly on the DaVinci online form, and I'll show you that in a minute. This allows us to know what hours you've completed, and once you submit that form to us, we will, in a relatively short period of time, upload those hours directly to PELSB, the licensing board. That means that those hours are in, PELSB already knows they're there, and it allows you to actually track your hours online, which is the next point. You can monitor your hours online at the PELSB site, and you can also see what mandatory requirements you have completed and which ones are still outstanding. If you notice something that is missing or incorrect on your PELSB account, please let me know, because we can go in and edit those entries if anything is incorrect. And last but not least, if you do submit any PD sessions on the DaVinci form that are from outside of DaVinci, like a webinar or an offsite training or something like that, please plan to turn in a copy of your certificate when you submit your online hour form. You can do that by emailing the form to me, or you can do that by putting a copy of it in my mailbox. The DaVinci form is going to look like this. It's simply a Google form. You're going to put in your name, your file folder number, when you took the class, the name of the class. There's a few other questions as well, and it'll ask if you meet any of the mandatory requirement areas. This will submit the form to us, and that's how we know what information to submit online to PELSB. One important piece on this one, you can only put one session in at a time. PELSB will only let us upload one class at a time individually. So let's say during workshop week you attend 5 sessions, or on a PD day you attend 5 sessions. You have to put in each of those 5 sessions individually, however they're offered on your sheet, because we can only do so many hours and we can only do so many characters for a description when we submit them to PELSB. So please put in each workshop or each session individually on this form. For your license renewal, you're going to want to make sure you know when your license expires and how many hours you need. There's a PELSB online lookup that is a public site that anyone can access, and I'll show you what that looks like in just a minute. You are able to pull a copy of your license. You're able to see your expiration date, whether you are Tier 3 or Tier 4. All that information is available in this online public system. You're going to want to continue to monitor the total number of hours and mandatory requirements you have. And I always recommend that when you are approaching the last year of your licensure, to really pay close attention on what you have and what you're missing. If you notice that you're missing hours or required areas near the end of your renewal period, please let me know and I can connect you with some other options and resources. When you get to the year of your renewal, you cannot renew until at least January 1st of your renewal year. All licenses expire on June 30th of the expiration year. So if your license is up in 2022, it'll be June 30th, 2022. You can renew January 1st, 2022. You also cannot hold on to hours for your next renewal cycle. So let's say you are a Tier 4, you need 125 hours, and you already have all of your hours that you need and all your required areas as of February of that year. If you continue to earn clock hours, those hours cannot be used for your next renewal period. You can only start banking new hours once your license is renewed. And I say that because if you can renew after January 1st and you have all of your hours completed at that time, you can renew in January, and then any hours you accrue in February through the end of the year will count towards your next renewal. So for most folks, it benefits them if to renew as soon as they have all of their hours after January 1st, because then they can start banking hours for the next one. If you don't, then any of those hours you accrue will essentially be wasted because they can't be used for the next renewal. And last but not least, all of the renewals are now done online through the PELSB system, and I'll show you where that is. There are no paper forms for Tier 3 and Tier 4. Everything is done online, and when you go in to renew, all of your hours will already be in there. You'll just click a handful of boxes, pay your renewal fee online, and you'll be good to go. Next, I'd like to show you the two online systems that you'll likely want to use in this process. The first one is just the PELSB license lookup. This one is a public site that is available to anybody who has the link, and all you're going to do is you're just going to Google PELSB license lookup, and it should be the first one that pops up. When you get there, you'll see a search screen that looks like this. You can either search for your file folder number if you have it, or you can search by first and last name. You do need to enter at least one character of each the first and last name for it to work. There are two buttons at the bottom. One says details, one says license. License will give you exactly that. It'll show you a copy of your license. So if you need a copy of your license for anything, you can pull a copy there. Detail page is actually going to give you a fair amount of information. It's going to give you your name, your file folder number. It will also show you all of the licenses you currently have, as well as when your license expires. So you can see in this example, this person has Tier 4 licenses. You can see what the area of the licensure is, and you can also see the year of expiration. And as I mentioned before, everyone's license expires on June 30th of the expiration year. So this system is really great for knowing whether or not you're Tier 3 or Tier 4 and when your license expires. The other system that I mentioned is the one where you can actually log in and see how many hours you've completed. This system is not public, and you will need to actually log into the system. So you're going to go to the PELSB website, you're going to go to Current Educators, and then Renew My License. So this is the page that you'll get to, and you're going to want to click on the Online License Renewal System. When you do that, it's going to ask you to put in your last name and your file folder number. And you'll notice they put the link for the license lookup page here as well. So if you don't know your file folder number, you can look it up there. The next page is where you're going to need some more information. It's going to ask for your date of birth, your social security number, and then it's going to ask for your serial number. When you get a copy of your license from PELSB, so typically when you get your license for the first time or when they renew, there'll be a serial number on the license itself. It's typically in the top right corner. If you don't know that serial number, you can click the link here to have it sent to the email address on file. Once you have that serial number, you'll be able to log into the system. And as always, if you have trouble with the system, feel free to reach out to PELSB directly. But once you log in, you're going to see a screen that looks like this. It's going to show you all of the mandatory areas that we walked through before. And it's also going to show, which areas you've completed, which ones you haven't completed. And down below, it will show all of the entries of any hours that you have so that you know exactly what's been completed and what hasn't been completed. So it's pretty straightforward, a really quick and simple way for you to see what's actually been entered for you and what hours and requirements you still have to complete. Note, just in case it's helpful, this is the same place you would go to actually renew your license. You can make any name changes, update your contact information, any of those kinds of things can all be done through this system. So it's really quick and easy. All right. Couple of final reminders. Remember, as I said at the beginning, you as the teacher, you are responsible for making sure you are fully licensed and making sure that you have your hours completed. You will likely receive reminders from me when it's your expiration year, but ultimately it's your responsibility to do the training, get the hours submitted to our DaVinci online form, and complete all the necessary requirements. Please, please, please don't wait until the last minute. Your license is up in June, but typically when folks wait that long and they're missing requirements, it's a lot more difficult to make up the things that they're missing. So I highly recommend keeping on top of your licensure. Log in at least once a year to see what hours you have, what you need. and reaching out to someone here if you have things that you're missing or if you have questions or anything like that. If you don't have a license, you could potentially jeopardize your position because we want to make sure that we have licensed teachers teaching at all times. So it's a simple process, but it's easily overlooked. So make sure that you reach out if you need help or have questions. So last but not least, like I said, my name is Andrea. I am the elementary principal here. I also serve as the CEU committee chair. My email is there as well. So feel free to reach out if you have questions. Ask questions early so we can help you while you still have time before your license expires. So again, if you have questions, reach out and let me know. And thank you for listening.